Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name is Brian Ong. I'm an account executive at Security Bridge, part of the APAC team based out of Singapore. To those joining us from APAC, good afternoon, good evening. And if you're joining from Europe, good morning. And to all of you, welcome to today's webinar, Are Your SAP Systems the Weakest Link? A CISO's Guide to Core Security. Now, this session is brought to you by Security Bridge and our partner, Hexelius Consulting. And we are grateful to have you with us here today to join us on this really important conversation on why SAP environments are increasingly targeted and why securing them must now be a top priority for CISOs and IT security leaders alike. And before we get started, just a few pointers for you to take note of. This session is being recorded, so don't worry. We will share them with you afterwards. During the webinar, you can also submit questions at any time using the Q&A function chat at the top right corner of your screen. Feel free to upvote questions as well and answer the top ones during the Q&A session at the end. Now, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers today who will share their expert insights on the SAP threat landscape and what you can do to stay ahead. We will kick things off with Barun Kumar, Director and Founder of Hexelius Consulting. Now, since 2009, Hexelius has been delivering cybersecurity services across the region. And Barun will share his perspective on how as the SAP security landscape has evolved and why it matters now more than ever. Next, our second speaker, we'll hear from Yun Yang, Managing Consultant from Hexelius. Now, he has over 10 years of experience in the SAP security and GRC space. He will dive into why SAP systems are vulnerable and why SAP security deserves more attention from CISOs and security teams. And then we'll hand it over to our third speaker, Yoris, our very own Director of Research from Security Bridge. Security Bridge has over 20 years in the SAP cybersecurity space, and he will share common SAP vulnerabilities, demonstrate how attackers exploit them, and walk you through a real-world attack scenario. And to close out, Yoris will also give you a short demo on how the Security Bridge platform helps to detect and defend against SAP specific threats. And finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. And that's the agenda for today. Let's get started. Barun, our first speaker, over to you, please.
Thank you, Brian. Again, good afternoon to people joining from Asia. Good morning for people joining from other locations. My name is Barun. I'm a director and a founder with Hexelius. While Brian has set up the stage in terms of what this webinar is going to cover, I'll start off with sharing some of my experience working in this space of SAP security for the last 25 years. While Hexelius is around 15, 16 years old company, I started my career with SAP security way back when I first did a project which was, you guessed it right, related to SAP authorizations and SAP segregation of duties. That project was for a client working on SAP R3 4.0B version. So a lot of you may not even be aware of them. That's where I started my SAP security career. Now, in those days, we used to talk mostly about access. We used to talk about segregation of duties. As the maturity improved, we started to look at the configuration settings or IT general controls. I worked with a Big Four for many years, and as part of our view into the SAP security, we'll be focused typically on these areas. But we have come a long way. We are talking about ECC. We are talking about SAP S/4HANA. We have different flavors of S/4HANA, whether it's on a private cloud, on RISE, on public cloud, and so on. So the landscape of SAP has completely changed. And what has changed also along with that is the threat landscape. So 20 years back, 15 years back also, when we talked about SAP security, we were not seeing people, attackers, hackers attacking your SAP system. It used to be considered an in-house system, basically within the boundaries of your firewall, within the boundary of your network perimeters will protect the SAP system, and insider threat was also not considered to be a very big risk at that point of time. But again, we have come long way from. We know of public use case, public news about system getting hacked, which included SAP system. We have situations where a SAP vulnerability has resulted into the compromise of the entire IT network, and a vice versa, where people, the attackers, have compromised the IT network and then gained access to SAP. So we have had all those scenarios, and that has created a renewed awareness about SAP security uh, beyond authorizations and segregation of duties. Okay, so now we are talking today more specifically about a CISO's perspective or cybersecurity perspective of SAP system. Now, why we have to emphasize on that point is because, as I mentioned, traditionally we have been more focused on looking at access and segregation of duties. uh, Now, SAP is also pretty unique and very complex when it comes to its own architecture. So, when the CISO role started to come and evolve in most organizations, CISO was made responsible for looking at the cybersecurity for the entire enterprise. But there was always this one small missing gap in their portfolio, in their arsenal, which typically is SAP system. And then the reason is, in a lot of organization, SAP has traditionally been managed as a separate IT system. You have a separate team which is looking after the SAP compared to the other part of your IT system. And when the CISO function started to evolve, that divide, that silo approach for SAP versus non-SAP IT system continued. However, it is important to protect SAP together with all the other applications, all your other IT infrastructure, whether you're talking about the database, you're talking about the network, the firewalls. We need to ensure that, like all other applications, SAP is also secured. Like all other IT applications, SAP has its own vulnerabilities. It requires hardening. There are codes inside it. Some of them are custom codes that needs to be secured. It is not a silo system. It interacts. It has got interfaces with other systems, whether it's a payroll system, a procurement system, a payment system. So all those interface needs to be secured. So we have evolved. And this webinar is all about talking why it is important from a CISO's perspective to have a deep look at SAP, understand what are the challenges, what are the threats, what are the risks related to SAP, and have a better approach in terms of managing the SAP security. So, Yu Yang and Yoris later will take you through more detail, more technical approach to this whole topic. But I just wanted to share my perspective because I know a lot of you probably are more aligned with SOD and authorizations when it comes to SAP security. For some of you, it might be slightly new in terms of what else are the threats within SAP system. Hopefully, this webinar gives you that new perspective, gives you a more visibility on what are the other things that we need to focus on. So with this thing, I'll hand over to Yuya, who can take forward this discussion and talk about why SAP systems are a prime target now for us. Yuya, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Barun. Hope you're able to hear me loud and clear. So, yeah, the next part too, I'll bring you to why SAP systems are prime target, just to have an overview of what is SAP cybersecurity, right? Yeah, on to the next slide. So, security in SAP space has evolved over the years. I'm sure there are many who even started off since R3 days, like what Barun have mentioned, right? So, personally, I have started SAP as a basis administrator. At that time, many years back, there were no such concepts of security, right? Basis does both basis work and security, right? They handle everything, and until recent times, that GRC gets more traction, security gets more importance, where roles of basis and security start to have clear segregation of duties, right? Similarly, right, SAP cybersecurity is also a pretty new term where not much people are familiar with. People are familiar with cybersecurity because it has become like a important sector in various organizations, right? Reason due to being it's sophisticated and frequency of cyber attacks are growing, and it it's also a huge reliance on digital infrastructure like SAP systems and all the digital systems that you have, particularly after COVID. Everything is on digital now. Um, Cyber attack can actually potentially cause severe consequences, and everybody to agree to that, right? So, over the years of my SAP experience, I do see such things happening. I never say impossible that it will never happen to you, right? So bringing the focus back on why SAP cybersecurity, because it's actually a crucial part of a business IT system where it stores sensitive and valuable data, right? This makes them target for cyber attackers. SAP releases numerous security vulnerabilities, and I'm sure there are organizations who also don't diligently patch their systems, right? Yeah, so SAP cybersecurity can be represented by three letters. I call it CIA, right? Confidentiality, which represents data confidentiality, integrity as well as represents data, and availability of the system. So as you can see, it depends on the intent of the attacker, whether they want to be here to steal the data or cause some business impact to you. Yeah. So let's move on to the next slide to understand, right? What are the challenges that typically faced in SAP cybersecurity, right? Firstly, increasing level of SAP security vulnerabilities being uncovered regularly are easily exploitable in a more attacks on SAP systems, right? SAP has even launched like a regular security patch day scheduled for second Tuesday of every month in order to synchronize with the patch day of major software vendors. Typically, most of systems done by traditional SIEM or SOC operations. Can move the next point, please? Yeah. So typically, monitoring of systems are done by traditional SIEM or SOC operations, and they do not have a view on what's happening in SAP systems. Monitoring is often cumbersome, and extracting SM20 logs and trying to make sense of it. So usually the SOC team will be unfamiliar with SAP, so what they can do is just to approach the SAP basis administrator and say, oh, okay, you give me all your logs, you dump me all your logs, and then tell me what should I monitor. What do they usually monitor? I mean, depends on application. Usually, it's like the login and logouts and failed attempts of logins that they monitor in the logs, right? So these are generic monitors that the SOC team can do. Um, if the SAP basis administrator does not have adequate cybersecurity knowledge or security knowledge over the SAP landscape, he probably could not give or provide better advice to the SOC team or the SIM team, right? So point number three, traditional SAP security assessments, right, focuses very much on SOD, password controls, and auditing, which are no longer sufficient to protect the current SAP systems when we look into cybersecurity. And point number four, most organizations, as mentioned by Barun, no one is responsible of SAP cybersecurity because SAP, as a complex enterprise system, it's heavily reliant on the SAP team itself and the basis administrator to manage the system. By and large, the CISO team doesn't really want to touch in or dip their fingers too much into the SAP system. So these are actually challenges that which require certain proper framework and structure, probably with the aid of a tool which will also help them navigate the challenges that I have mentioned in all of these 4 pointers, right? Right. So I would like to give you, probably you'd like to give some guesses. Oh, yeah, on what a business sees SAP as versus an attacker, right? I mean, go through your, just take a few seconds to go through in your head how does the business view ERP system, right? So, yep, we can go on the next one. So, typically, business see SAP system as a ERP system. Of course, it it's a critical business application to aid their business processes and transactions, right? It's a backbone for finance, HR. Yeah, if you're using like HCM or even success factors in the HR system. It helps to manage your supply chain and operations. So this is what the business see. But an attacker doesn't see your SAP system like what you see, right? It sees the SAP system as a gold mine for financial and personal data. So they are looking at all the data that you have, particularly even if you are listed, if they can get some insights to your financial data, they definitely want to get it out from you, right? A gateway to privilege access, right? And having privilege access actually in a system means you can do wonders, right? And system full of misconfigurations waiting to be exploited. So attacker is very thirsty. They look of all these kind of loopholes that they see if they can enter to your system, right? Yeah. So a quote which I gotten from the security breach CTO Ivan. Yeah, perception is the greatest enemy of action. So how you view it will determine how you take your action actually. So if you don't put your shoes in the perspective on the attacker in this case, you wouldn't know the importance of SAP cybersecurity, right? You're just in your day-to-day business and you just, yeah, that's it. So there's no room for being reactive, right? Because the time when we get reactive typically is already too late. So definitely you need to think of it now itself. Yeah. So typically business only worry about system uptime, uh, performance of system, and audit and compliance. The last one, which the thing people just always worry about audit reports and compliance and try to appease the auditors. And IT team is always focusing to make the business happy and the auditors happier, basically, right? Right. Next slide, please. Right. So what does the attacker focuses on, right? Some of the points are like weak SAP default configurations. So some certain SI when they implement SAP for you, right? Of course you are doing a greenfield. Uh, the SAP default configurations might not be the best, right? Leaving dangerous settings still in place, right? Of SAP being a very customizable environment, it gives you many options to actually tweak your um, system settings, right? So you need to really look into your system settings, particularly around RZ10, and see if there's any weak SAP default configurations, uh, over privilege of users. So basis or system users having excessive attacks, meaning the attackers can have this overprivileged access and they can go across various systems or even grant themselves access and or even do certain things like delete certain logs or information that actually can hide their presence in the system, right? So they are actually looking for all these overprivileged users are not properly segregated or secured. Custom code vulnerabilities. So often these custom ABAP codes, right? ABAPers typically they do not focus on security. They do not actually input security checks for your roles, right? They'll given a functional requirement, they'll just build your program, a Z program, and deploy it for you, right? And functional consultants will not even test it properly to ensure that certain roles will be able to execute this uh, custom program or not. They'll just go in and just test their functional program, whether it's working end to end. So it's not securely tested and encoded with all these types of checks, right? Unprotected business data, often critical financial, payroll, and procurement data are left exposed. They are not properly secured, or data, accesses are not properly segregated. So logs are there, are always in the system, but what are you monitoring? So is there someone actually watching the logs properly? I mean, there are always a lot of activities, especially if your enterprise is huge. Are you monitoring the right things in the logs? So attackers can stay undetected for months until, maybe 1 month, 2 months later, you realize, hey, why is this particular account getting logged in on this particular host name that is not part of, a basis or IT team, things like that. So until then, you realize then certain damage already has been done. So yeah, that is one of the points that the focus of the attackers. Systems with outdated SAP patches, as mentioned earlier. So many accounts are not updated, sorry, with the latest patches due to the complexity and high customization environment. Um, Typically, the bases don't really like to touch because uh, they are worried that by applying any notes or patches, it actually would interfere with certain business function. So certain basis administrator, when they are not comfortable, then these kind of patches are actually not frequently monitored or looked into, right? So these are possible loopholes that may happen to organization as well. So in summary, right, hackers are not concerned about your compliance, your audits. They care about what they can steal, they can disrupt or exploit your system, right? So SAP cybersecurity isn't about fulfilling making them happy. So I mentioned it's about adopting the attacker's mindset. You need to be one step or even two steps ahead of them, so that you don't react, because by the time you react, it's a bit too late, right? So you need to anticipate their moves and think of uh, how they target you, right? So having a tool to manage your SAP cybersecurity alone and not managing it properly doesn't bring the value out of it. So one of the best way to manage cybersecurity is to integrate with your managed services. In Hexidus, we do cover setup, health check, and all the way from level 1 to 3 support. Yeah. In the next part, we will have Oris to go through the real-world exploits on SAP vulnerabilities. So I'll hand over the baton to Oris, please. Or do we want to actually answer some Q&As? Do we have?
I think we'll do that at the end, Yu Yang. Thanks,
Sure.
thanks anyway for all the information you shared so far.
Sure.
And let me elaborate a bit more on that and see if we can zoom in a little bit, just a little bit, because of the time. We cannot go as deep as we always want. My name is Joris van der Vis. I'm the head of SAP Security Research at Security Bridge. Just like Yu Yang, I started out as a basis consultant 25 years ago, but moved in around 2006 more to the area of SAP cybersecurity. I've been involved in pen testing, but also been doing a lot of security research and reported over 100 zero-day vulnerabilities to SAP to help customers better protect themselves, and in the end try to make the world a bit more secure by doing so. And I'm happy to share some experiences with you in the area of SAP cybersecurity. So first, a few words about why we do all this. Why bother about SAP systems, right? And I think that's good to quickly discuss. I also heard Yu Yang mention it before. Typically, SAP systems are really important for our organizations or for the business. It's not a secret that SAP systems typically hold business critical data, and support the more mission critical processes. So when these systems go down or fall victim to ransomware, it can have quite a rippling effect on the businesses. That combined with, let's say, an increase in risk, because we've seen over the years more and more SAP systems being connected to the internet, for example. Also, there's quite an increase in cybercrime. It's just way more easy to, as a criminal, to do your criminal activities from your lazy chair instead of physically robbing a bank. So there's also a big increase in cybercrime, and that all taking into account is really a reason for you to really take your SAP security to a higher level. On top of that, and I think Yu Yang also mentioned that there is quite stronger, heavy compliance regulations throughout the world. It differs a bit on the, let's say, geographical location you're in. In America and in Europe, the compliance regulations are quite heavy, but also in Asia, the APAC region, we see that that's picking up and getting more as a heavy burden on companies. So SAP is important. That's the bottom line. Also, typically, SAP systems are another beast, right? So to say, it's not your typical web application. They're way more complex, quite often also separated from, let's say, the rest of your IT landscape. And also, what I've seen, for example, is that generic penetration testers don't really touch an SAP system because they don't know how it works. SAP systems have their own protocols, their own technologies, and are therefore typically not protected by the typical security solutions you might have deployed. And that is because these typical solutions like a firewall or antivirus, they don't speak Japanese, as we say, meaning that they don't understand what's happening inside that application. Therefore, SAP systems are in many organizations a blind spot. What's also really common is that corporate networks are often breached. We see that in the news every day, for example, by malicious attackers that lure people into clicking links sent by phishing mails. And the thing is that once a network is breached, it's often a small step to go to the corporate SAP systems. This is our own penetration testing experience as well. It shows that SAP systems of customers that do not take additional measures are quite easily breached, especially if you run your SAP system already for a long time. Typically, when it was installed, it had all these insecure by default settings. So SAP systems really are a blind spot. And that combined with the complexity of those systems show that there is a need for a last line of defense to protect specifically those SAP systems. To make it a bit more, let's say, tangible, we provide you with some, typically missed vulnerabilities or configuration issues that are typically missed by traditional solutions. This is by no means extensive. There is more, but these are some typical examples. I'll not go over them individually, but as you can understand these, and as you can see, and as you probably know, these are all SAP specific, let's say, misconfigurations that we find by scanning your SAP systems. Most of them are on the SAP application layer, and we encounter them over and over again at customers. And most of the above lead to, let's say, breached SAP systems or can be used in post-exploitation scenarios where they are used, for example, to move from one system to another system, to privilege escalation. Again, it's arbitrary. We have hundreds of checks that check all the blind spots, but these are just some examples. We have a similar overview when it comes to real-time threat detection. Again, this is not the full list. We have hundreds of use cases that check for any suspicious events that might happen in your SAP landscape in real time. But this is an overview. By the way, there was a question. Yes, the slides will be shared, so you can always look back later what is mentioned here. I think that this is for now more than enough on this slide. We have also a top 5 for ABAP code vulnerabilities. Also there, what we see is that customers, well, actually all customers have custom code. There's no customer that does not have SAP custom code, even with all the, let's say, keep the core clean principles. Customers still have legacy ABAP code. There can be vulnerabilities there as well. We do a lot of ABAP code scanning at customers. And this is just 5 examples that we see quite often happen, and it can have a severe impact, right? So like ABAP code injection or operating system command injection almost always leads to a breached SAP system. The same for SQL injection. So also that is quite an important topic to not leave out and make sure that you address within your organization. To make things even more tangible, we have 2 demos, and the first one is about RFC hopping. The second one is a vulnerability that is already there for 5 years, but still we see it out there at customers. Yeah, Brian, you can go to the demo. The movie you see this is really low-hanging fruit and really easy to exploit. What we see actually is that you can jump from one system to another system just by existing RFC connections. And it might have gone quite fast, but what we actually saw is, and every basis consultant knows this, it's almost too easy to show, but we still see this at customers. What you can do is just use RFC connections with a pre-filled user and password to jump from one system to another system. This is a quite easy one that shows this in, let's say, with a dialog user, so you can do it in the GUI. The same applies to RFC connections where there's a non-dialog user, so an RFC user or a system user. You can also abuse that. Why is this important? Because you can do lateral movement, as we call it, or RFC hopping. And this means that you can use low security zones like a sandbox that you have access to or a development system that you're able to breach. And you can use those connections to move throughout the landscape and eventually end up in a productive system with all the productive data. And that is quite serious. So this is quite often an underestimated risk. We have another demo. This is the recon exploit, the famous one. It's quite, well, it's not that recent anymore. It's like 5 years old, but we still experience it and we see it at customers. It basically allows you to unauthenticatedly create a user in the SAP Java stack. In this case, as an administrator, it might be a bit small, but the only thing you have to do is you have to point this exploit that you can download from GitHub to an SAP system. You just need to know the IP address and the port, and that's really all. If you're vulnerable, it allows you to create an administrator user. You can use that LAN to log on, and you're in the SAP system. This is really serious. We did a pen test not too long ago for a big pharmaceutical company in the US. They have everything patched, which is perfect, but they just forgot the Java stack of their solution manager. That's enough. That's enough. And typically we see this a lot, these technical systems like a solution manager or focused run. There's no focus there because it's not a business system. There is a Java stack that was not really under the scope of the patch management team. And it just takes one system to breach the whole SAP landscape. These are some simple examples. To summarize, the world is changing, and the same for cybercrime, audit pressure, it's all increasing. Typically what we see is that the investments that are done in generic security solutions are not really helping too much to increase your SAP cybersecurity state. So therefore we really see there is a big need for a last line of defense, specifically for SAP systems. To get in control and stay in control, you need a proactive and preventive solution. We built that. It leans on decades of SAP security knowledge. The Security Bridge platform supports you in a lot of automation and providing that 360 degree that you need on patch management, vulnerability management, threat detection, code security, and more. I'm happy to show you a bit more about the platform. So let's share my screen with you guys. Just to double check, Brian or you, Yan, can you see the screen? I guess it should be fine.
Yeah, we are
Yes.
seeing a screen now.
Great,
Thanks,
guys.
Joris.
Thanks, guys. Then let me spend another 10 minutes or so on showing you what we do with the Security Bridge platform. As mentioned, it's covering a lot of functionality. You see here some core security functionalities, real-time monitoring, security and compliance monitoring. That's more about vulnerability management, patch management, custom code scanning. It's not going to be a full demo because the time does not allow us to do so, but let me quickly touch on some vulnerabilities. Some functionalities that might help you in fight vulnerabilities and attackers. Before diving into the details, good to mention that we come from an ABAP background or an SAP background. We just do nothing else. We focus on SAP. The solution is built in SAP. The backend is ABAP, the frontend is Fiori UI5. No need for additional VMs or hardware. It just runs on top of your SAP system. It's holistic. The functionalities work together. And the good thing is it's quite easy to install. You just need the add-on or some transports to import in the central system. That can be any ABAP stack running on-premise or in a hyperscaler, even in RISE. That's all fine. It's an SAP certified solution. And how it works is that from this central component that you install, you create connections to the rest of your landscape. Let me briefly show you what type of SAP systems we currently support, because I think that's good to know. Of course, there is these old, let's say old, it's still really good to have SAP systems running on the ABAP stack. We see many customers still have ABAP systems. It's there, it will stay there for a long time. And still, the majority of landscapes are still existing of ABAP stacks. Of course, we support that. On top of that, you can see the full list of supported SAP system types here. Of course, we didn't stop there. It's not just the ABAP and Java stacks. We also can connect to the more, let's say, recent SaaS-based solutions. You see BTP in the list, but for example, there's also Ariba, Concur, SuccessFactor, and of course, components that are there to create these hybrid landscapes or connect to the cloud, like the Cloud Connector. We also support it. For most of these items, we can scan them, we can see misconfigurations, or we can do real-time monitoring. And of course, there's also ABAP code scanning that's typically for ABAP systems. There's a lot more to the global settings and technicalities, but I'll leave that for another time. Let's have a look at some of the functionalities. Maybe good to start with the event monitor. This is real-time monitoring. So what we do, we use all these data sources that an SAP system has, like the security audit log, user change documents, for example, but also more technical log files like the RFC gateway log, message server log, ICM log, HTTP logs, etc., etc. We read those logs and we collect the events that come out of them. Then we apply logic and intelligence to try and make sense of that, which is not that easy because typically SAP logs, they are not structured in the same way. It's hard to make sense out of that. You cannot do that in a manual way. You need automation there. We have deployed like hundreds of use cases that try to make sense out of those events and really show you what's happening. You can see all those events here in the security bridge. event monitor. We even look for anomalies. But also important to know is that there is a tight integration with many SIEM solutions. Splunk, Sentinel, HP ArcSight, you know all of them. They are typically deployed in security operations centers. We see more and more customers have them. And all the data you see here can also be sent to that SIEM to be correlated or, let's say, mixed with data coming from other non-SAP security-related logs in your organization. This really helps you break open that black box that SAP systems are and give you the insight needed. There is a lot of information you can get out of it. You can, again, also see the data here. You can aggregate the data. You can see what's happening. Well, let's see if we can take an example. In this case, there is a specific workstation where 2 different accounts are logged on from. That might be weird, might be a reason to further investigate. To do so, you do need the information that we provide here. When did it happen? Where did it happen? From which laptop? What's the IP address? But also a bit of understanding and explanation of what is the risk, why you should look into that. Again, all there to help you better understand what's happening inside your SAP systems. There's more. We have security and compliance. This is more like vulnerability management. That is not real time, but scanning your SAP systems on a regular interval, typically weekly, but it can be changed. It's all configurable. We have many checks that you can do, not just on ABAP systems, but as you can see, HANA, Java systems in the cloud, etc. Typically, you will get a lot of data that you can use then. This is the end goal, to harden your SAP systems. You want to harden them to really raise the bar when it comes to breaching your SAP systems. You want to make it as hard as possible to be able to gain access to your SAP landscapes. There is a lot of information here. It's divided by area of responsibility, as we say. So there's findings for the basis team, authorizations team, etc. For all findings goes, you can see the details. For example, if we take the critical assignment of roles, you can really see all the details, accompanied with a risk explanation, a link to our knowledge base that is really there as I think one of the world's biggest data sources for information around SAP security. Customers will have access to find more information. And again, you will see static overviews. You can even accept risk. If you want to not see a specific finding anymore, you can document that. Of course, you need authorization for that. But the strength of the platform is also here because we have the different functionalities work together. So we're not just showing you the static list of who has SAP all, for example, but in the overview below, you can also see events coming from real-time monitoring to show you, for example, when a specific profile was added or deleted from a user, which can help you in case there is an issue or an incident. You need to do forensic analysis. This can help you better understand not just what the current status is, but also what happened over time. Again, all there to show you, to help you better harden your SAP landscape. There's much more to it. If you're interested to see more, then let us know. We are happy to give a more deep dive on all these modules. A few others I want to highlight because we have patch management. Patch management is important too. It shows you what SAP patches there are and what SAP patches are specifically, well, let's say, applicable for your SAP systems and whether those patches are applied or not. You can see that per system. If you just take one as an example, have a look there, you can see that there are SAP patches missing. The good thing is we have added logic and functionality to not just give you this overview, but also implement these patches in an automated way which is, well, quite a unique. SAP standard doesn't offer you this. We help you there. If you have a large backlog of missing patches, we can automate the majority. It's not a silver bullet for all patches, because there's patches with manual steps or manual actions. These cannot be automated, but still 60, 70, sometimes even 75% of these patches that are missing can be installed in an automated way. Of course, in the development system, and from there, typically move it like you would otherwise also do with SAP transports throughout the rest of your landscape. There's even more, because as I mentioned earlier, we have a code vulnerability analyzer. This is really there to scan your custom code, can be in a mass scan for the whole landscape, and then start working on it. You can also use it in your software development lifecycle, and really give your developers already in the development system the right tools needed to scan their code for security vulnerabilities. Can be SQL injection, cross-site injection, or cross-site scripting, sorry. These typical web application issues, but also SAP-specific issues in the code, like missing authorization checks, etc. You can see all the findings from here, or you can integrate it again in the development lifecycle. And from the standard tooling, like for example Eclipse, you can directly scan your code as a developer. You can see from here also, for example, even on code level, really what is happening, what the risk is. We implemented also an AI-based solution that can help you better explain what the code does, what the vulnerabilities are, and how to best fix that. These are some main functionalities. There is more, but again, looking at the time, let's leave that for now. Maybe one last thing to mention is that we also have a management dashboard, because all the functionality I just showed you is really going down on the details and really low level, again, with a lot of details. But we also have a management dashboard that is more reporting on a higher level. So if you're a CISO, you might want to know what's happening on a high level with my SAP systems. You can see, for example, the systems that score pretty good, the ones that score, well, not so good. You can see security incidents or high-level information around code vulnerabilities or events coming out of your SAP landscape. So really a lot of information. We also have, and I think this is just added recently, I think it's not even in the in this view yet, but maybe good to quickly try and add it. You can see how easy it is to add cards to really get additional information, because what I want to show you is this card. This is just recently added because a lot of customers asked for it. You can even do industry benchmarking. So you can see for your systems how they do compared to the market average or even the market best in class. And a lot of customers want to know this. How do we compare to our peers? How do we do? Are we doing fine, or do we need to improve? So really a lot of information. Yeah, and in the end, and that's really what we try to do, give you all SAP security relevant information for you and your Defender team. Yeah, to really be able to get the insight needed to better protect your SAP mission critical systems and really be that last line of defense for SAP. That having said,
Thank you for
will give
the
it back to you,
awesome
Brian.
demo, Yoris. Thank you so much. I think we have a couple of interesting questions that you might be interesting for you to answer as well. We have a question from Kamarudin. Barun answered part of it. Perhaps you can also elaborate further. Barun's question is, does it has capability to stop any anomalies, activities / transactions based on behavior, etc.?
Yeah, we do. So as I mentioned, we have real-time monitoring. So you have that insight into what's happening. On top of that, there is an action center. And that action center can be used to connect actions to specific events. So, and that is coming from different functionality. So, for example, what we can do, let's assume there is an SAP transport that contains custom code, and that custom code contains vulnerabilities. You can configure it in such a way that you, for example, block the transport from even being released. So this is one of the actions that you can do, block the transport from being released, which means that the vulnerable code cannot even be shipped from development systems further into the landscape. What we can also do, there's a lot of actions. You can, of course, you can send out emails. You can even have incidents created automatically in your ITSM solution. So if you use ServiceNow or other ticketing systems, in the case of specific events, that's all configurable. You can have incidents created in an automated way. But there's more. As a last example, for example, what you can do, you can also send pop-ups to users. So if somebody downloads data from a critical table, and you can define what's critical, you can send a pop-up to the user, hey, be aware, this is a critical table. Keep in mind that downloading this might be sensitive, so make sure that the data you download is stored in a secure way. Again, a lot of actions that you can do. Yeah.
And a great follow-up question is, automatic incident response is possible?
Yeah, so this relates to what I just said earlier. Automatic incident response. Yes, you can have findings translate into an incident automatically, and we support quite a lot of ITSM solutions out of the box. There is a direct integration with ServiceNow, but you can also use, for example, I forgot the name, but in the solution manager there is also incident management functionality. We integrate with that. There are ways to send the data to ticketing systems, yeah, for almost all ITSM solutions. Yes.
Thank you, Auris. I saw another question from David. Is there an agent type for SAP content servers?
There is not a specific agent type for the SAP content server directly, but what we do have are specific content server checks as part of your ABAP agent. So if you have an ABAP system that is connected to a content server, typically you can see that in the transaction OAC0. There we do some checks on the content server, for example, if certificates are used, if HTTPS is used, if the version is recent. So yes, we do have some content server specific checks.
Thank you, Joris. Looking at the chat now. There's one by Marcus. What is your approach of prioritization of issues seen? I'm assuming this is when you were demoing the security and compliance checks. Is there possibilities to inject customer attributes like environmental infos for internet facing to your risk score?
No, we don't do that. But there are, and again, by using the action center, you can increase or decrease the risk of specific events. So if you have somehow information or triggers to integrate with that, yes, you can do something with the action center. For example, what we see customers do is that they say, well, if we have a finding, but that finding is in a productive system, then we want to increase the risk from medium to high or whatever. And you could do the same thing, a similar thing, maybe with SAP systems that you have connected to the internet. So if you have like I don't know, like a Java stack that is connected to the internet, what you could do is increase the risk of the events coming from that system via the action center. And then you more or less have, I think, a similar thing.
Thank you, Joris. Now let's look through the questions again. Which programming languages are supported by CVA?
Currently, it's ABAP and everything around ABAP. So it's not just typical function modules and programs, but I think also in the area of screen builder, etc. And classes. There's a lot of scanning you can do. I know it's extended also to the what's it called? ABAP in the cloud. So ABAP in BTP. I'm not sure what the current status is. I think actually it's already live, but this is something I'm not doing too much with. We have a roadmap. So for people having access to the knowledge base, you can always see there what upcoming functionality there is on the roadmap. I think for now that is currently what is supported.
Okay, and a question from Mike: does the product is it capable or compatible with cloud-based SAP? Short answer is yes, but I'll let Joris answer that.
Yeah, you're right. So Brian, you're absolutely right. So the only thing important here is that you have to run your controller on an ABAP system. But actually, and that can be any ABAP stack as of 740. So this is already really, really old. So this is what every customer has, and it doesn't really matter where that ABAP stack is running. If it's on premise, if it's on a hyperscaler like Azure, AWS, etc., that's all fine too. But even in the cloud like RISE, or what's it called nowadays, the SAP private cloud, right? There, that's also fine. The only remark there is that if you want to install an add-on, there's two options. You can do it with a transport, then you're fine. You can do it yourself in any productive client you have access to. If you want to use the installation option of the add-on option, then it's done typically in client 000, and that's where you need SAP to install it, because in RISE or the private cloud, you don't have access to client 000. But that's not an issue. Then SAP can do it for you. You just raise a ticket and SAP will do it. So also that works. Yeah.
Thank you. Meha asked this question. Some parameters are not supported in RISE SAP systems. Are those reported as a part of config vulnerabilities as well when scanned?
Yeah, I'm not too deep into which specific parameter these are. So I'm sure I'm not really sure if I can answer this one. What I can say is that we do have for SAP RISE specifically, we have templates. For example, to SAP more or less demands from customers that your SAP systems have specific values for specific parameters if and when you want to migrate to RISE. And we do have a template, SAP RISE template, that scans your systems and show if they are ready to be migrated to RISE or not. I'm not sure if that helps. Specifically, I don't know which specific parameters are meant here. So I cannot really answer that one specifically.
All right. Looking at the time, we have one more minute, maybe a quick one. Maybe to Barun. Just, I think we have a question. A typical question that's typically asked: do traditional security teams and SAP basis teams typically collaborate effectively, or is there still a gap when it comes to SAP security?
Thanks, Brian. So yes, that is definitely still a gap. I think there is a bit of miscommunication, I would say, or a lack of communication when it comes to SAP security, when it comes to the traditional cybersecurity. And that is also reflective in some options that we did. Basically, yes, I mean, one of the typical examples I always take is a annual regular VAPT exercise, the penetration testing that most organizations conduct. A lot of times, cybersecurity believe that they're also testing their SAP system. In reality, in most of the cases, they are not. At the most, they are covering the infrastructure of the SAP system without really testing their SAP application layer. And that is a miscommunication. That is a misunderstanding of what they're covering or not covering. So basically, in short, I think there is still a significant gap between these two teams, and they still continue to work as two separate silos. And hopefully with Security Bridge, as we always talk about, right, it's a bridge which basically links the SAP and the cybersecurity team. It also has got those technical functionalities where these features can be integrated with your SIM, with your SOC, and that should hopefully bring these two teams together.
Thank you, Barun. And with that brings us to the end of our Q&A session. We are 5 p.m. Singapore time now. We'll wrap up today's webinar. Well, on behalf of Security Bridge and Exilius Consulting, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time and hope the session offered really valuable insights into securing your SAP landscape. Now, if we didn't get to your question today, don't worry, we will be following up after the session. And if you'd like to reach out to us directly, our contact details are on the screen right now. A copy of the slides will be sent to you too. And last but not least, the recording of the session will be shared to you as well after this webinar. Once again, thanks, and have a great day ahead.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.